Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. And yes, it's Groundhog Day. Oh, how many times have we been here? If you were to the very first time, you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. Of course, on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we are on Blue Sky too. Look, I've gone and hunted down three of the very good influencers out there, social media fanatics on transfers, to try and give us a steer on what is happening with Tottenham. Because to be honest, I haven't got a bloody clue. If you're for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms, we're of course on Instagram, we're on X, we're on Facebook, and we are on Blue Sky too. I'm going to bring them in at the same time from a question. Already, we're putting them under the grill. Back alongside me, he doesn't mind my questions, he's used to them. The wonderful George Akliouche is back on the show. George, lovely to have you in, mate. I'm going to ask how you are first. And alongside that, Ali Gold, bless him, dropped his latest video over the course of the last 48 hours and reminded us, for those that aren't aware, we've had 91 direct goal involvements ripped out of this team. And so far, Mohamed Kudus, bless him, with just the 5 goals he brought into West Ham last season, is our only starting to really enforce that front line. Tell me how you're feeling with a Super Cup final in less than 3 days from now.
Well, first of all, I'm great personally. Thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure talking to yourself, and we're going to get into it, no doubt, with Kish and Mitch. But yeah, in terms of my feelings around Spurs at the moment, I mean those 48 hours with the Kudus and the Morgan Gibbs-White, here we go, was just bliss. I feel like, this is it's the turning point. This is what it feels like to be Man City. But unfortunately, we've done the Spursiest of Spurs things, and half of that's not even been true, and that was probably over a month ago now that whole saga happened, and yeah, it's just been sort of atrocious since then. To me, it's just kind of really shows the lack of preparation, because I understand that there's maybe a few options that might be unattainable, or they don't want to choose us, but there's still plenty of footballers out there, and I'm just a bit disappointed that Kudus so far is the only real proper first team player that we've brought in on a permanent signing. A brilliant one at that. I think that's like the standard we need to set, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree.
I'm just a bit disappointed that that's it so far. When look, I understand. Look, it's a community. I'm sure we'll get into it more in more detail in a bit. But I understand the Super Cup's not exactly a legitimate trophy, but it's a great chance at going up against a top Champions League side in a trophy setting. And to not have the team anywhere near ready for that, to be able to test ourselves for the upcoming Champions League, I don't know. It's a bit worrying.
Yeah, it's more than a bit worrying. Look, people are absolutely loving the panel we've assembled for this one. I did try and bring us a panel that are going to hopefully give us a steer on what they understand to be what is happening around Spurs. Because like I said, at the moment, I appreciate, and rightly so, there's a lot of concern right now. And I will just say, for those that are wondering, we are engaging constantly with change for Spurs. We've got direct dialogue with them at the moment. So, of course, any news with regards to those obviously wonderful people, we'll bring that to you. Also back on the show, we've got the wonderful Mitch Fretton joining us. Mitch, love to have you back alongside us here. Mitch, I'm going to throw the same tweet at you that you threw out there to the world of social media, I think under a week or so ago. No James Maddison for Tottenham. We know he's out for the majority of the upcoming season. That's 23 goal contributions. Heung-Min Son, we've packed him off to the US. That's a done deal. That's another 23 goal contributions. No dueind Kulusevski to start the season. Probably looking at potentially September, October for his potential return. 21 goal contributions. That's none available for the start of the new season. You have to ask that question, how can Thomas Frank be expected to compete with a weaker squad than what we had last season? Mitch, lovely to be back. You give me your first take.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for having me back on. It's always a pleasure, and it's great to be on alongside a great panel as well. I mean, you summed up my words from last week very, very well there. We have lost a lot of goals from this Tottenham team, and I distinctly remember Daniel Levy saying in his statement after sacking Ange Postecoglou that he wants to win the Champions League and he wants to win the Premier League, and yet, as you rightly said, we have a weaker squad, in my opinion, now than we did last season under Ange Postecoglou, who clearly didn't have the players available to him to be able to compete on all 4 fronts. And that was the Europa League rather than the Champions League that we have to deal with this year. So it's just, as George has already alluded to, really, it's just a bit negligent from the club, in my opinion, to be 3 days out from the Super Cup. And everyone who knows Tottenham will always want to win a trophy just because of how starved we've been of that success recently. So the Super Cup is something we'll be taking very, very seriously on Wednesday. It's a great opportunity to go up against the best team in Europe. And then if we beat them, get the Super Cup at the end of it. It's an amazing opportunity, but we're just incredibly underprepared for it. And I really, really struggle to see how we're going to score a goal. Like, PSG haven't had a pre-season. I'm not even sure they've played a game yet since coming back from the Club World Cup final. No. And yet, I think most of us are probably sitting here still thinking we're going to get turned over quite heavily because we don't have the goals in the team at the moment. We're struggling with injuries. There's no creative sort of outlet, bar Kudus, who can't do everything, especially against a team like PSG standard. So I think the general feeling is just frustration, isn't it? And it's something we've become accustomed to over the last years. You know, I said earlier, we've just won a piece of silverware, right? We've got a new manager and we're sort of embarking on this new journey, new era yet again, you know, as we do every couple of years. Like, you want to go into the season excited and, you know, have a sense of like, oh, what are we going to expect this season? But be, you know, excited about what you're going to see. But I don't have that feeling at the moment because I feel underprepared. And that's just a general view I have about the team at the moment. And yeah, it's just annoying, really, to be honest, Ricky. There's still so much we need to do before the window closes in 3 odd weeks. And the season's here now, basically, and we're underprepared yet again.
What's worrying me even more, Mitch, and listeners might not have heard that because of the nature of it in the background, there was an ambulance going past Mitch's place there, almost as like a warning signal, thinking, beep, beep, beep. This could be a potentially long start to the season. Listen, what a time then to come and make your debut with us. I think one of the people, if you follow him on X, who's got really good, I'd say, feature shows that he's done in terms of the analytics of the players Spurs have been linked, which have been really a whole host this summer. And this man, I think, has worked so hard bringing us a lot of data, a lot of analytics behind players that we haven't gone on to sign. It's time we thought we've got to get him on the show. We've got wonderful Kish, Millie White Lab. Kish, it's lovely to have you in and make your debut. I'll bring you in and ask you as well. When you look at the fact as well, Tottenham had 5 players record at least 10 GAs in the Premier League last season. Heung-Min Son, James Maddison, Brennan Johnson, Dominic Solanke, Dejan Kulusevski. Only one of those players is currently available for selection. And our competitive season starts in less than 3 days. Kish, lovely to have you here. What are you making of Tottenham?
Yeah, I mean, it's not the best at the moment. I'm someone who's quite positive, to be honest, but it's hard to be positive around the club when I agree with what George said about lack of preparation. For me, I've never been someone who just wants the club to go and throw money everywhere. I don't think you require necessarily big transfer fees to solve all your problems. I think a lot of it's about coming down to planning and being smart in the market. And I think that's where I'm got such an issue with what's happened this summer, is that all our targets seem to be opportunistic rather than, okay, we need this kind of player in the squad. We need this kind of player in the squad. Let's go and look at a list of those players, who's attainable, who's not attainable, and then move down the list methodically where you end up at the end of the window with exactly what you wanted. Whether that's the first choice, the second choice, you get exactly what you needed for your squad. And at the moment, it just looks like a bit scattergun. We're kind of looking what crops up in the market, and if that doesn't work, okay, now we want to go and get this player. Like, we were linked with Gibbs-White, for example. That didn't get done, and it doesn't seem like they've moved down a list to look at the next similar-ish player. They've just thought, okay, that was an opportunity. It didn't happen, whatever. And then Maddison's now obviously got injured, and now they're scampering around, probably looking for a 10, where if you were in for Gibbs-White and you really wanted Gibbs-White, then you should have got someone else when that didn't work out. And they haven't done that. I think there's bigger issues in the squad than just that. But obviously that's the most pressing issue at the moment. In terms of goals and assists, I think obviously that's going to be a major issue. I think even getting the ball from build up into the final third has been as much of an issue. So I'm not necessarily just worried about the lack of goals there. I'm worried about even creating those opportunities for those goals or assists to come. So yeah, at the moment it's all quite negative. But we'll see obviously what unfolds.
I just say there's over 3,500 that are watching this show right now, and I would want to just say out there, this is three of, I would say, the most rationally fair, balanced Spurs fans that I see on the social media circuit. And I would just say, you know, given the nature of how we feel, and I know out there's a lot more frustrated fans, and rightly so. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head for me, Kish, that move for Morgan Gibbs-White now just looks more and more opportunistic day by day. And look, I was away, which I kept being reminded at the time when they were looking to get that deal over the line for Gibbs-White. I was told, don't come back because things are changing at Tottenham. Don't come back. And when you look at it now, even that kind of 48 hours where we had the news around sponsorship, injection of money into the club, Daniel Levy potentially stepping aside, it just feels like really nothing much has changed at Spurs. And to top it all off on that, we have had some really interesting comments from Thomas Frank in the last 24, 48 hours, which the national journalists have brought to our attention from having him on the tour. We'll be bringing them into this show because I think for some out there, there'll be an element of concern where the words that are leaving Thomas Frank's mouth, this is nothing against Thomas Frank, but we have heard these words by the same managers over the last 10, 15 years, time and time and time again. It does become tiresome because we all give so much time and sacrifice to this football club because we love it, we adore it. I mean, you just want to see the club be successful, but it's really hard when you see the summer that we've had so far. And I think, Mitch, you said it, and George, you said it in your opening as well. You've got the chairman coming out at the start of the summer saying, we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League. But so far from what we've seen, the words do not show any sense of the action. When you correlate those two, there just doesn't seem to be any tallying up of how that makes any sense whatsoever. Look, we're going to bring you an overview before we do go into the show of what we'll be discussing on here. Look, we do understand at the moment Spurs are in the market, exploring the market, according to friend of the show, Fabrizio Romano. They are active at the moment, and from what we understand, their targets at the moment, which have been aligned by Johan Lang, Thomas Frank, and the recruitment staff at Spurs, is that they are looking to sign both a number 10 and a centre-back before the end of this summer transfer window. Spurs are confident they will have the funds to carry out their transfer plans this summer, and Frank is prioritising both of those preferable roles to be filled by the end of this summer transfer window. Now, the failure, as we've touched upon already, to prize away Gibbs-White from the clutches of Evangelos Marinakis seems to have really knocked Tottenham off their feet more than what we ever could really have imagined. And on top of that, this is the week in which we've seen the captain of the football club, who obviously, of course, is no longer Heung-Min Son, complete his move to LAFC. We had a wonderful tribute show with Sun Mo Lee. If you haven't checked that out, we urge you to. That was absolutely superb. And look, there appears to be no fear within the club that they cannot finance their transfer plans. But I think the biggest question for now is kind of what is those transfer plans? And as we are here, we are less than 30 days before the transfer window is going to close. They have got a real lack of option in terms of that midfield right now. No James Maddison, no Dejan Kulusevski. You've got Bergvall or Sarr that you might argue could play as a more advanced, midfielder, but it's not ideal. Khannouss, Odegaard, we've seen them been moving to the middle during this pre-season, but it's not ideal. Thomas Frank has said we are definitely in the market in general. Of course, when players get a long-term injury, we need to look into that, but we are generally in the market. Nobody feels close or far away. I'm not saying there's anything, but there's anything that can't be confirmed as 100% right now. The club this week have been linked with another move for Eberechi Eze. Tottenham, there are reports suggesting, will make another approach to go back in for Eze in this upcoming week. And that is purely because, from what we're understanding, Arsenal are starting to cool their interest in Eberechi Eze as they focus on sealing exits away from the football club. Despite Tottenham's denial, we understand there is interest in Nico Paz. But again, that move does come with its complications, given that Real Madrid have a number of buyback clauses on the player. The club have also been linked with the likes of Harvey Elliott, which, from what we understand, has been called. And Jack Grealish, as things stands, is potentially on his way to Everton. So keep an eye on things with relation to that. And Tottenham have been linked with also a move for the AS Monaco player, Akliouche. And we'll be bringing on to him later in this show. So there's a lot to cover. Definitely on this edition of Last Word on Spurs. And I suppose it goes back to the kind of point that we've kind of touched upon at the start, guys. Come around to you, G. When I ask you what the plan is, you know, where do you even start in terms of what the plan is? We're here, like I say, 3 days away from a Super Cup final. How concerned are you by the lack of direction right now? And are you confident in any way this squad will be greatly improved to give Thomas Frank the chance to compete, as Kish said, on all four fronts?
That confidence is dwindling day by day, to be honest. I think we all knew from the start of the window there was massive complications for this season in particular when it comes to the squad size and what we need for the Champions League. I think we've barely got any room whatsoever, and that's still assuming that we're selling Basuma, that maybe Kulusevski's not going to be registered for the first part, that Maddison's obviously probably not going to be registered for the whole season, that there's still so many things we need to do before we have a squad that's capable of playing. And that means we can't make more than 3 signings at all. For maybe 2 is probably actually the maximum, which is why I can see why it's a 10 and a centre-back. The thing I don't quite understand with the centre-back situation is that again makes me think that, say, like the Dakota Takai move, obviously I can't really comment on him too much because we're yet to see him play. But to me, as the days goes on, that's feeling a lot more like another opportunity whereby we're entering a market where you can get their best players for quite cheap. Because what was he, 5 million, I think it was, which is like the record for the league.
Yeah.
That to me is screaming like an opportunity, because if we're now all of a sudden saying we need another centre-back, bear in mind we've got Romero, we've got Van der Ven, we've got Danzo, Dragoshin's supposedly not crazy far away, still a few months, but it's not like a season ender type situation. When you've got all these options and you're still going for another centre-back, that screams to me that you don't have any confidence whatsoever that Kota Sakai is going to be your guy, that Dragoshin's probably going to be your guy by the time he comes back. And maybe the thought process is that, look, we saw what happened to Van der Ven and Romero last year with their injuries. And I think Danzo is a great third centre-back to have. But the only thing I can think of is we want Danzo and someone else to completely rotate with Romero and Van der Ven. I'm not sure if that's maybe the best planning going forward, because are we going to play Danzo in this new signing in FA Cups and League Cups? And then we keep Romero and Van der Ven to the League and Champions League, which that's going to be tough because when we play Champions League midweek and then Premier League at the weekend, are they still not going to play 2 games a week? So I don't quite understand spending all that money on a centre-back right now because of the Maddison injury, where I feel like personally that those funds are much better used on getting a proper number 10 to replace Maddison. And then we needed another forward before Maddison got injured anyway.
Yeah.
So whether that was a left winger or maybe it was another number 10 in terms of a younger player, or if it was a striker. So I just, right now, I just don't really see the vision of these moves. And the longer it takes to get in this number 10, which is such an important position for us, the more I'm a bit worried that the plan's gone out the window because of the injury.
I know people think, George, I'm crazy even asking you this question because you've been doing this show with me for the last 8 years. Are you surprised the club have not acted in this last week, given the fact no James Maddison, no Dejan Kulusevski, no number 10, and the fact on top of that as well, I've said I don't think Thomas Frank approved this. I think this has been a club move, and I might be wrong on this, but I'd be stunned if Thomas Frank did approve Jamie Donnelly to head out the door, because for those that aren't aware, Jamie Donnelly's had a really, really good first appearance with Stoke, assisted a goal already. You'd imagine that would have been maybe a decision that's been made internally rather than Frank, because you would have only seen him for 3-4 training sessions. Just want to quickly cover that off for me, George, on that.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. It's a weird. And to your question about whether I'm surprised or not, I mean, we've gone through this many times in many windows where we've looked like we've gone for a big player or at least for a lot of money. It hasn't materialized, and then we've not brought in someone else after it. I'm not necessarily surprised by that, although I was saying off air to you guys before that usually when it's been like Dybala or whoever, Bruno Fernandes, it's usually been a deadline day situation. Like, oh, we had 60 million all along. We couldn't get him on deadline day.
There's no excuses now.
Yeah, we're going to have to try next time. But now there's no excuses. This happened a month ago.
No
and
excuses.
The injury was last week. So
yep,
that's where I'm a little bit more surprised, is that clearly there was some sort of plan with the Morgan Gibbs-White move. I refuse to believe that a multi-billion-pound club in Tottenham doesn't have a backup to Morgan Gibbs-White in their planning. So that's where I'm a little bit surprised and why the action has been a lot slower.
Mitch, I'll come around to you. Look, we know in terms of that centre-back pairing, Romero and Van der Ven, when you look at them generally last season, they missed a lot of games. Last season in general, they had 60 to play. Romero was only available in 26 of them. Van der Ven just 22. Is that the primary reason, Mitch, you feel that's why the club are prioritising a centre-back along with an additional number 10? Or do you think there should be other areas of the squad we should be looking at, Mitch, as a priority for you? What's your gauge on that if we bring you in and get you to unmute?
Yeah, it's not a priority for me. And looking at it from my opinion, looking outside of the squad inwards, it's just the thing is, I don't want to tarnish the name of Ange Postecoglou and stuff like that, but I think Mickey van der Ven will probably be playing in a very different way this season to what he did last year, in terms of you'd hope that he's making less of the recovery runs and has less ground to cover and is in general maybe making less sprints, because he's probably going to play in a bit of a deeper formation and general setup under Thomas Frank. So I don't like to think of the idea that the Spurs hierarchy are inevitably resigned, that Van der Ven's just going to, and Romero are constantly going to get injured for the rest of their times at Tottenham. But I mean, if we brought in a centre back, it's not. I wouldn't be like, oh, what are we doing that for? Because I can understand why, especially if Vuskovic goes out on loan. If Takai's, I mean, we don't know how long Takai's going to be out injured with this foot injury that I think he's got.
No.
Dragusin, again, we don't have an actual return date for him. So you are at the moment probably looking at Kevin Danso and then Ben Davis as the two centre backs that come in at the moment. If Ben Davis isn't shifted out to left back as and when Udogi's injured or Spence picks up something. So I get it. It's still not the top priority though, is it? Because, our back four, do you know what? I was about to say our top back four is completely fit. And then I realised Udogi's injured at the moment, isn't he? Because we can never have our best back four fit at the same time, can we? Like that would just be asking too much. But, maybe I'd think about that area instead if I was going to target a defender, bringing in a fullback that could possibly, because I know a lot of people say Jed Spencer's better on the left, so maybe look at a right back to cover Porro with the amount of minutes he plays as well. But either side would be fine with me. But I'm finding it really, really difficult to look past that number 10, just because of how important it is under Thomas Frank, that particular role. Just because we have absolutely no options in there. Like, I was going through the team that we're probably going to see against PSG on Wednesday, and my two options for who is probably going to play in that number 10 role is either Pat Matassar or Lucas Bergvall, right? So, while there's nothing against either of those guys as players, because I really love both of them, and they've obviously got huge potential between them, I'm not entirely sure that them being in the number 10 is the best role for each of them. Maybe more suited to Bergvall than Sarr, but it's not really what we want to be seeing right this second when you're about to go up against the European champions, in my opinion. And like I said, that's where the frustration is, that it's just the season is now here and we're still not got anyone in or have had targets. So yeah, but I agree with what George said again. Like, we needed an attacker / midfielder before the Maddison injury. So if you look at it that way, you still need to bring two in. And it's very, very quiet on that front. And, you've got to hang on to that tiniest slither of hope that they are actually doing stuff behind the scenes. But we don't know that, do we? So it could all be, fabricated and fiction at the end of the day.
I mean, I feel like I'm going to come around to Kish. I've not even read Thomas Frank's quotes out yet. I feel like once I read them out, I mean, there's 7,000 that are watching this live right now. I feel like the 7,000 might just go absolutely nuts and turn the TV or the device they're watching off. And to be honest, guys, I wouldn't blame you right now, because it's even tough recording this. I mean, at the moment, Kish, even our injury situation at the moment with Tottenham, this is showing no signs of dying down. And Postecoglou's left the football club. Maddison, an ACL, Udogi, a knee injury, Solanke, a knee injury, Kulusevski, a knee injury, Radu Dragusin, he's still recovering from the ACL, Manor Solomon, a calf injury, Coach Sakai, injured, Brian Hill, injured. We've changed the whole backroom staff, the medical staff, the manager has gone, and we're still getting injuries. We're still getting injuries, Kish. Can you explain that?
I think some of those are bad luck, to be honest. I think some of those are poor planning last season that we're still feeling the effects of, in terms of the amount of minutes that Udogie had to play last season, then chucked right back into it as soon as he came back. And I think both the fullbacks were worked crazily hard last season, and that was also partly due to the fact we didn't recruit well enough to cover them, but also I think the system demanded insane amounts of work from the fullbacks until we sort of reverted to a more traditional back four. In terms of Maddison, I think his body's clearly slowing down a bit. I think his injuries are stacking up, and that again is probably bad luck for us. I think the answer to big injuries is having rotational options that you can and rotating properly. Because I think previous managers haven't rotated well enough. I think rotation is the key to keeping a fit and healthy squad. And that doesn't have to be rotating a full team in the week in a cup game and then changing the full team. It can be every game you change one or two players, and obviously you have to have the standard of squad to be able to cope with that. But you use players that are suited to a specific fixture. So let's say we're playing against a high line in one Premier League game, then you might have a striker who's good at running in behind rather than having Solanke there, and that gives Solanke a rest. Or we're facing a team where they put loads of crosses into the box, then you might put Danso in rather than Van de Ven because he's good at defending his box. Those kind of things in terms of rotation are the key to keeping a fit squad. But you have to have the players to do that. And I think we're caught in between both. I think there's some areas where we're able to rotate. I think in midfield, we're pretty stacked into sort of the two pivot players. I think in other areas, we're really light. One of the fullback positions, obviously, I think we've got three very good fullbacks, but I think we're missing one extra. I think centre backs, for me, we're pretty well stacked in centre back, especially with Vuskovic coming in. I really don't understand the links to a centre back, especially on a permanent basis. I think I'd understand potentially if you want to loan Vuskovic out and get him a certain amount of minutes, then maybe bringing in a centre back on loan until next season, where Vuskovic can then come in and be a solid option. But I really don't understand signing another centre back when we've probably got 6-ish centre backs on the books already. And then we're light in other areas. I think up front, as a 9, I think they need to make a decision on Richarlison.
Are you stunned, Kish? Are you stunned, Kish, that we haven't made that decision yet? Are you surprised personally?
I think I'm surprised a lot about the lack of sales. I think the sales have almost been worse than the actual incomings. I think we haven't. Have we sold anyone?
Not of any high nature, no. Well, the players that we anticipated were going to go, Hill,
Keeley for 1 million is the only thing we've done.
Yeah. So no senior players have gone, and that's inexcusable.
We're the 10th of August. We're about to start our competitive season in less than 3 days.
That's lack of planning again, because you should have potential suitors probably queuing up towards the early parts of the window. You need to know who's interested. In the same way that you need to know who you want to bring in, you have a list of each player for each position you want, and you have maybe a list of, let's say, 5 to 10 players, and then you work down the list, and you have your top priority, and then you work down in terms of that. I think that is just, again, lack of planning. And for me, it's like the damage is kind of done now. Of course, I'd love us to go and sign a 10 and fill those, but it just feels like desperation at this point, and it feels like we're chasing
our tails.
Chasing our tails. And so of course I'd love us to go and get 2 good players, but it would scream a bit more luck if that worked out, rather than the fact we've done a good job this recruitment phase. And so that's where I'm at with it, really.
No, I do agree. Look, we obviously have sold the captain. We have sold Sonny. Sonny obviously has left the club. The highest profile departure. Sonny, of course, has left us. I mean,
that one was just too heartbreaking to think about it.
Well, I will just say, Joe, I think Joe will give the club credit for. I think the content around Sonny and his exit has been superb, and I think the way they've handled his transfer has been well. But I think everything else apart from that, I have to say, people may not like me saying this. Some out there might not like me. I think it's just been totally shambolic. Shambolic in terms of the preparation of bringing players in. Shambolic in terms of the players that are coming out the club. I mean, quite honestly, I just look at our situation right now, And I feel it as I think we all feel it as fans. I mean, I watched that Bayern game, and look, I have to say, to put it into context, Frank has lost one of his preseason games, right? I mean, anybody questioning him at this stage, I think, is slightly OTT, but there's been no real sufficient backing of the manager so far to give him any opportunities to succeed. And it feels like Frank has been brought in really on the parameters that he went in at Brentford, really, where go in, work with what you can, get the best out of what you can, but not give the man any real true tools to be able to take Tottenham any further than what they are. I think some people forget, we finished 17th last season. I think it's going to be very, very hard for this Tottenham team, under anybody, to go from 17th and transform themselves back into, dare I say, a side that's going to fight for the top 4, the top 6. I think that's going to be so, so hard to do. I really, really do. And I just think we are not even giving Frank a chance at the moment. We really aren't. And it's him I feel sorry for. Because when I watch him on interviews, you feel so happy to be here. But we see that with Tottenham managers at the start of every one of their tenures. And unfortunately, that nature starts to rub off. And it happens to the best of them. We've seen that. And the amount of the high-quality coaches we've broken. That would be my biggest concern. We do need to bring in Frank's quotes, but yeah, like I say, Heung-Min Son has been the only highest profile departure of the summer. Obviously, we've got the situation. Obviously, Josh Keeley has departed as well. There has been some tentative links that we'll come on to in the show to the likes of Leicester's Khannouss. James McAtee is another one to keep your eye on. Of course, Man City player. That looks like he could be leaving before the end of this transfer window. And we are going to loop back round to shortly on 𝐅𝐸𝐸. I know everybody wants to know what is happening with EZE. We're going to come to him very, very shortly. We're still waiting for the club to make a decision on, of course, Vuskovic and whether he'll go out on loan. We understand he's of genuine interest to HSV, but there have been no proper discussions yet over a year-long loan. That, of course, can change, but nothing imminent as things stand. Bryan Gil, he's working his way back to fitness after suffering that knee injury. At the moment, we have got no definitive understanding as to where he will go. And the club have also got to make a decision on Manor Solomon. Like I say, he would be potentially the 7th Tottenham transfer before the summer deadline does end if he is to depart. And he was in sensational form for Leeds United last season. So keep an eye on what's going to happen with Solomon, because he's not featured at all in pre-season. There was the suggestion that he was injured at the start of it. I'll be absolutely staggered if we do see him again in a Spurs shirt. Look, but we are going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners on audio. Like I said, we have got over 7,500 of you that are watching the show live. Guys, if I can encourage you to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It feels like a really important addition of Last Word on Spurs, this one, to share this out to the wide range Spurs community. I'm joined. I'm losing my words. It's already early. George Achilles is back alongside me, as is Mitch Fretton. And we've got Kish over at Lily White Labs. We'll be giving you a bit more info on them and more, where you can find them. We're going to turn our attention to Thomas Frank's recent interview, which I know for many out there has got some slightly concerning words. And that will then lead us into the transfer targets, guys, and what Spurs are looking to do. Now, Frank had a big sit-down interview with a lot of the national journos at the back end of last week on the pre-season tour. Biggest thing coming out on that tour was that Thomas Frank was involved in squad planning with Daniel Levy, with Johan Lang, and with Vinay Venkatesham. Frank says he wants a squad that is capable of competing in all competitions, but does not want too many players, as it's impossible to keep everyone happy. He said the squad needs to be big, robust enough so it can compete on all 4 fronts, but I cannot have too many players. It's so difficult keeping everyone happy. It's almost impossible. G, take me away what you make of those opening words from Thomas Frank there on that tour, those quotes.
I don't really think his job is to keep players happy. I think his job is to get 3 points at the end of the week, to be honest with you. As harsh as that may sound. I just think we've got to face the reality that this squad needs upgrading in certain areas. And unfortunately, that does mean it's going to be at the detriment of some players. And I get his point to an extent, but I think football has changed so much in the last few years, where there's a few more games every year because of the UEFA changes to their leagues. So that's happening. We've had Winter World Cups that have been a part in leading towards more injuries because of breaks and more games. especially with increases in the size of competitions. I think footballers are just simply playing more football than they have done ever before. So more injuries are happening and the squads need to be bigger. And I think as well, it doesn't put confidence in you, right? It feels like the moment you hear that, it just makes me think, oh, okay, so we're not going to get any more people then, or we're not going to get as many more players. And I've got to keep these bench players happy, so I can't bring any more competition for them.
Does that feel? I have to ask you this. Sorry, does that feel like the words Thomas Frank would really want to say, or does that feel like? I mean, this is. I mean, I have to be honest here. Enoch, Daniel Lee, we've heard this line. I mean, and the other quotes I've got to come are very similar to a lot of the previous Spurs managers. We've heard these lines before. We've heard these lines before.
100%. And even the point that you were saying about in the interview about he's had the meetings with Levy and Langer about the recruitment and stuff like that. I think on one of his first interviews he did for Spurs, Thomas Frank said that he doesn't necessarily go in saying, I want this player, I want that player. He gives a guideline of this is the type of player and what they need to do for what I'm trying to build. And then he kind of trusts the data-led approach, which ours clearly seems to be similar to Brentford because we all had same targets in Gray and Johnson. They wanted those two as well. So I think he puts trust in those guys that, yeah, I need this, and this. Use your data to find me these players. But it's so easy for Levy or the board or Langer or anyone to just be like, no, that player's at our budget. We're not going to go to that level. No, that player's not on our budget. It's not possible. And in reality, I just think that you just start going down the line of the squad is just not really going to improve, and you're going to take last minute punts and look for opportunities as opposed to having a very clear cut plan like before.
I have to say on Johan Langer, for me, from what I've seen at the moment, bar the signing of Lucas Bergvall, we've had a real struggle, in my opinion, selling players permanently, as we've discussed already on this show. And for all the fact that we're under the radar buying players, Wilson Odegaard being the primary one, which was done without really any of us knowing, and we get in the link that he signed for the club in the early morning or whenever it was. I've seen very little confidence in, I've seen very little to give me any confidence that Johan Langer, if he's the right man to be steering our recruitment drive. And I know Parategy, from what we understand, is still working in some form of a consultancy basis. If this man's suspension is up, I'll be moving heaven and earth to do whatever it takes to try and bring Parategy in a much more vocal role if he isn't already when it comes to our transfer policy. Because I have to say to you, in terms of Johan Langer at the moment, I have absolute zero confidence that this man is going to help build us a squad that is capable of competing on all four fronts. Because here we are on the 10th of August, 3 days away from a competitive final that's going to really, hopefully, give us an indication of the season itself. I know it's one game, but if we win that, we go into that season bounced. If we don't win it, you already have those concerns about what the season looks like. If we don't respond in the right manner. And it kind of leads me on to this next point that was asked to Frank, and what you came back on, Mitch, is that Frank insists that he would prefer to wait to sign quality players that improve the squad rather than just signing players for the sake of adding depth. And also outlining his plans to build a side that can last the long haul and be competitive straight away. He said, we want to see if we can add quality. We don't want to sign players we don't think can really improve the squad. I would want to wait. We have talented players who can grow. I'm not here for the short fix. I want to build something that can last. We need to think longer term, but we need to compete now. I've been doing this show, Mitch, for 8 years, right? I think I've read, if not the most identical line, but a similar line for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 managers. Unmute, Mitch, and tell me if I'm wrong or not. Tell me if you've not heard that line by some of the previous managers.
Oh, Ricky, that entire interview that he's done, if I have to be totally honest, it's kind of annoyed me. Because you're exactly right. It just it's the same words, just phrased slightly differently, time after time and time. That point that you just brought up, I get to an extent, because you don't just want to add anybody to your squad, right?
Yeah, of course.
But when you consider the revolution of data-led analysis these days and data-led scouting, it's much easier to find players that are out there that can make an impact, or maybe will make an impact when they're settled in and stuff. And I don't buy the idea that there aren't players on the transfer market that wouldn't add significant quality to us, particularly with the areas that we need to improve in. You know, there are a number of different like number 10s out there that I think a lot of fans would be happy if we were brought in. And it just that whole interview, it's given me the sort of vibe that he's trying to temper expectations going into this new season, and I don't like that, because like expectations are going to be high coming off the back of winning a trophy. Like, now that fans have got a taste for that, inevitably you're going to want to compete for those trophies every single year, because the feeling of winning one is just incredible. Obviously, it's easier for him to manage the Premier League expectations because of where we finished last season, but also if you don't perform straight away and you don't get that team and, you know, clicking, he's not going to be here for the long term, because that's the nature of the football business. Exactly, and Tottenham in particular. So it just feels like he's almost shooting himself in the foot already with the words that he's saying. And I've been trying quite hard this summer not to compare his appointment to the Nuno type of thing. But when he comes out and he says stuff like that, and it doesn't fill me with any confidence and any hope. It doesn't get me excited. And inevitably, when you've got fans feeling like this, it makes it a lot easier to then turn on the manager and turn on the players a lot quicker. Like, if we go into the new season and we're losing every week and we haven't picked up any better form and we haven't improved from what we saw last season, the fans are going to get on his back straight away. And I just feel like it's not really been the right stuff to say if you want to try and get the fan base on side when you're coming in off the back of a manager who's just delivered the club's first trophy in 17 years. So yeah, I think I'm just as angry as you are, to be honest, Ricky, with what's been said in that sort of interview, because yeah, it doesn't fill me with much hope and much optimism for the season. And that goes back to the point I mentioned earlier. That's the main thing you want to feel going into a new season.
I just don't know if you ask me, hand on heart, these are words Thomas Frank wants to say. Because these are the same words, Kish, come over to you, that we've heard from so many different Spurs managers. And I think, like all of us here, I don't want a yes man. You know, I know people will come back to me and say, well, that's what's always going to be under ENIC. And that's why, for me personally, people know my feelings on the board. You know, I've been on those Change for Spurs marches. I've made my position very, very clear. We work, in alignment with Change for Spurs a lot in terms of having that regular dialogue with them. You know, I have called for change. Nothing has really changed from my perspective. Winning that trophy, for me personally, shouldn't be the fact that we should now just all stop and be grateful that it's our second trophy in 17, 18, 19 years. That should not be enough. And I think you said it earlier, I think, George, that, but the fact that we've won that trophy and what it gave us on that week, that day itself, that gives you the hunger for more. I do not want to be waiting another 17 years for a trophy. But the problem is, when I read the quotes that come out like this, it does give me concerns. I do not want another yes man. But the problem is, Kish, coming over to you, when you've had the Contes, the Mourinhos, you'd say arguably two of the most ego-driven managers in world football that will normally always get what they want. Apart from when they're at Tottenham, they didn't get what they want. So should we really expect anything different? And Frank goes on to say that he absolutely insists that he knows exactly what he was walking into at Tottenham. And contrary to others' belief, the Dane says Daniel Levy has been very good to work with so far. He said, of course, I did what I could in terms of my due diligence about the club and the people that were involved in it. I will also say, with the short knowledge I have of Daniel, I guess that's the reason why you asked me this question. I don't think he's got the best reputation, but for me, he's been very good. He's been very good in his approach with everything. Very, very transparent. Sometimes there can be a reputation that's very difficult to get away from, but so far things have been very good. And just to be clear, that interview has only been done in the last couple of days. So that has been since the Gibbs-White deal was fallen through. And obviously up to speed by the fact, the only senior players that we've brought to the club so far is Khannouss and João Palhinha. So what do you take away from that interview and those words there, Kish?
For me, I don't think the blame should ever lie with Thomas Frank. I think the blame is what's going on around the club. If people are frustrated around the lack of signings, the lack of selling the overall point of where we're at as a club. I think it's always going to come down to the ownership, and I think Thomas Frank has a right to say where he's at on it. I think he's a new manager that's coming into a squad that is majorly improved than where he's been at before. I think he's a manager that maximizes players, right? He's shown that time and time again at Brentford that he brings players in who are maybe at a certain level and then takes them up to become the likes of Ivan Toney, Brian Mbeumo, Ollie Watkins, etc. I think he'll be looking at this squad and thinking, I can work a lot with this squad, and I believe that. And so I think he will be excited by where he's at the moment, and he's not carrying all the baggage that the rest of the fan base are carrying. And so I think we've got to remember that, for one. I think for two, I agree with him in terms of you don't just go and buy players for the sake of it. And I think that's often what fans want in these summer windows. Let's just sign. While I agree, I want signings, I don't want us to end up in a case where we're sitting on Richarlison for 60 million. These other kind of guys we've signed for big money from Premier League sides, and then we're sitting a few years later not being able to sell them. I think the club needs to be way more directed about where they're signing. And I think planning and this overall idea of data-led signings needs to be put into action more smoothly, and we need to have that list that I was talking about and going down and making sure the targets are right. I think at the moment now we just look like we're scrambling, and Frank is obviously trying to temper potential expectations because he knows where the squad's at, and the squad is nowhere near at the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City. We know that, and so of course fans are crying out for us to compete on Champions League and Premier League year in, year out. But if the squad's not there, the squad's not there, and that's not down to Thomas Frank. That's down to the ownership. So where I'm at with those comments is probably he's saying what most managers would. If you kind of get employed by your new boss, you're not going to go and start calling him out before the season's even started. There's nothing much he can say right now. Even if he is frustrated, he's not gonna come and say anything crazy. And when managers have, they've been sacked. So it's a difficult situation for him. But I also think he's probably really excited by what he's got, which doesn't mean that he doesn't want more. But I think we'll see very quickly if he gets frustrated by the squad size, the quality of the squad. But it's the same with every manager that goes into a new club. They're always barring the Contes and the Mourinhos. All managers are excited by the opportunity, by the quality they have, because all managers back themselves to improve players. And I think Thomas Frank is a manager who's always been able to improve players, and he's probably looking at that squad like I can create something really, really special here, and we'll see how that goes. But I think we've got to take him out of it and look at it as an overall picture rather than targeting that anger towards him, I guess.
I think, Kish, you know what? You make the points there, and I don't know if you. I think a lot of people that I consider that there's nearly 10,000 that are watching the show at the moment. If you polled the 10,000 people that are watching this show right now and those that will listen back on the audio, I would like to think, I can't speak for everyone, I would never want to do that, but Palhinha and Khannouss, to me, sound like really good, sound signings. So I'm actually not criticising the work that's been done. For me, what I'm criticising the fact that we haven't done enough of that kind of work to give the manager already a squad that is able to compete on the four fronts that the board keep telling us is the priority. Because if that is the priority, being able to compete on all four fronts, then already it feels like they're failing Frank, because he hasn't got the team in place before pre-season, really. And that's why, again, I have deep reservations and massive concerns for him personally, that I think, of course, he is happy to come to a club like Tottenham. It's a massive step up to Brentford. I'm sure he will feel like a lot of the managers that have been at Spurs, I can take this squad up a level. But the thing is everybody knows when you come to Spurs, there is always that ceiling that so many managers have tried to punch through. From Pochettino, Mourinho, Conte, Postecoglou, they've all tried to punch up that ceiling. And the thing with Postecoglou now, on reflection, and many know my opinions on Postecoglou, I really found it difficult for a lot of the time of his reign to really see what we were doing under him. But when you now reflect back on it, he chose the smartest way to win, which, again, people would think, well, hold on, what, 23 league, 22 league defeats? You can't condone that. And you can't, because, again, I didn't condone that every week. People know how I felt. But he chose the smartest way to go and win a trophy because he knew he just couldn't compete on all four fronts. But when you look at the spending over this summer, and this will be a thing I want to ask you guys before we go for the next break, that Man United, they've added 𝐳𝐭, Mbeumo, Cunha. I think along with Diego Leon, that quarterback, that quartet, it's set United back over 200 million. They've apparently got financial problems, right? Hasn't stopped them from spending. City, they've spent 126 million so far on signings. Arsenal, they've got, you'd argue, say, a huge amount of their business done. Liverpool, they've got that British record deal over the line for Hugo Ekitike. They could break that along with Florian Wirtz by going to sign Alexander Isak before the window closes. So when you look at the players that the clubs have improved with, Arsenal, Gyökeres, Zubimendi, Madueke, Mosquera, Norgard, Liverpool, Wirtz, Ekitike, Frimpong, Kerkez, United, Mbeumo, Cunha, 𝐳𝐭, Chelsea, Delap, Pedro, Gittins, City, Cherky, Rendirs, Aït-Nouri. It already feels, G, coming over to you, these clubs have made tremendous strides already in the market. So even before we did our business, we were already trying to play catch-up. And that feels like those clubs have taken already a massive stride away from us. So in your opinion this season, what is the target for Tottenham? What do you see being the target?
In terms of where we want to finish in the
league
league?
position. What are we competing for league-wise? Where are we aiming, looking to be, do you think?
Do you know what? This is the main thing. This is why I feel a bit frustrated a little bit with the business that we've done so far. Because in my honest opinion, I genuinely think fifth is open for the taking for anyone. Because from all the business that's been done,
you're saying
so
that
far,
still now, still with even those business that has been done by those clubs.
I'm saying it's still open because we've still got a month to go at the end of the window, so there is a still chance we can close that gap. But if to put into context, the top four, in my opinion, I think they are the top four: City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. I think they were already on a good stead, and they've added incredible players this window already. I think they're running away with it. Last time Newcastle were out in the Champions League, they capitulated in the league, and they also have not been able to add any signings apart from Langanger so far, and the ability to potentially lose Isak is huge. So there's a big question mark over them. I think Nottingham Forest as well, they've got into Europe. They've lost Langanger. They've not really added to the squad. How they can handle both, I don't know. Their preseason has gone terribly so far. Who else is up there in that sort of position? Brighton. Again, on Villa. Villa's another one. Again, contesting with Europe. Rodgers has just got an injury at the start of the season. All right, there were talks earlier about Watkins potentially going elsewhere, but because Man United has shifted to towards 𝐳𝐭, he's probably looking more likely to stay. But I think they're looking okay. Now they signed Gessend as well, so maybe they can handle it. But I think a lot of these teams aren't necessarily going to have as flying season as they did last year. Bournemouth as well, losing two of their centre backs. They might replace them well, but they've lost a lot of key players there. There is the opportunity to close the gap massively and go for that fifth spot. It's then up to us to go into the market and raise the level of our squads. I already think our defence is going to improve anyway under Frank, because I think
you can see that's been what he's been working on, isn't it? He's worked 100%. A lot on that in the preseason so far.
100%. And I'm not saying we're going out there and we're going to get clean sheets every week and we're going to be the best defence in the league, but I think it's going to vastly improve us. And I think for me, it's the attack that needs sorting out the most, because like you were saying at the start of the video, 91 goal contributions we've lost. And this is going to be the first season in, what is it, like 10 to 12 years that we're not going to have Son, Kane in our team.
Kind of talisman. When we've not got that figurehead, have we? We haven't got that figurehead. No.
Exactly. And as much as I love Khannouss, I think it's a fantastic signing.
Yeah.
He's not necessarily guaranteed to give us that 20 goals a season that we were sort of used to having with the likes of Son and Kane. And in that case, we've got to make it up with the rest of the squad. And I do think, I agree with what Kish was saying earlier. I think Frank is going to do a good job with the youngsters and improve them. Unfortunately, if we do want to believe into this hype of, we need to do well in the Champions League, we need to do well in the league, I just don't think the attacking part of our squad is anywhere near that.
No. But you think, George, for you, is this season coming up, and I want to put words in your mouth here, is it about just trying to get ourselves back up in that top 8? Do I ask you to say that? I mean, because we're sitting here saying now, United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, they've all made tremendous strides to already go up and elevate their level. So on that basis, what is our aim this season? What positioning wise can you see Spurs doing at the moment?
I mean, to be fair, like, the fifth was more what I think we should be aiming for. But from the outside looking in, it clearly just seems to be 17th was a disgrace. Let's get back into Europe. And I mean, just Europe. So that's what, 8th and above, probably. And a decent attempt at doing well in the Champions League. And that probably means just getting past the league phase. So getting past the league phase and top 8, I imagine, is probably what
you think
the club have really been set, to be honest.
Yeah.
We'd all love top 4. Of course we would. But in terms
yeah.
of a realistic thing, I think that top 8 and knockout phase of Champions League is probably what they're trying to aim for.
If I'm Thomas Frank right now, Mitch, and I've been set with a task, and it's not to put words in G's mouth, if I've been set with the task of finishing 5th with this squad and competing on all 4 fronts, I'm going into Johan Langer and I'm banging on Daniel Levy's office every day at the moment saying, what do you expect me to do? How can I work with what I've got? You know, I've got no central attacking I've got no number 10. I've got a squad that finished 17th last season. You're asking me to push it on. And with all due respect, he worked with better forwards at Brentford than he had at Tottenham. Now, I know those forwards are going to be departing in due course. You know, Vista's going to be, I think, going to Newcastle. Brumo's already left. But what do you think, Mitch, at the moment, in your mind, is the aim, positioning in the league at the moment, given what he's working with at the moment, given we don't know what's left to come for the rest of this window?
The aim will be to qualify for Europe in some capacity, I would imagine. Whether that is finishing 5th, whether that is finishing 6th, getting in the Europa League or Conference League, I don't know. I just feel like that would be satisfactory for Thomas Frank's first season, and then maybe if you add in a cup run there as well. I think, to be honest, if like now that the Europa League sort of been ticked off, I would imagine there'll be a lot of emphasis on the domestic cups this season, because the Champions League is just like I hate saying it because I don't want to say it like this, but it feels more like a luxury this season. Like, it will be nice to be there and compete with the teams, but realistically, if we get through the league phase and get into the knockouts, then we've probably done quite well as it stands, by the way. And I second what George said, there's still time left in the window to turn things around and bring in quality to the squad to be able to compete at that level. But, you know, when you look at it, I think I checked out the Champions League table last season, and I think to get through automatically, you needed to win like 5 of your games in the Champions League phase, and I think you needed to get 2 or 3 to get into the playoffs. So, you know, it's obviously not impossible to do that, even with the squad that we do have. But I just don't know what to expect in the Premier League this year. That's the big thing, isn't it? Like, we don't know, because of how poor we were last season. Yep. Like, how are we going to now play under Thomas Frank against these teams? How are we going to compete against our rivals? Are we going to be able to play against Chelsea or play against Arsenal and compete with them in a competitive setting and actually, you know, give them a match and pick up points off them? Because it feels like it's been such a long time since we've done that. And that, I feel like, is an important step that Frank and this squad need to take to give fans sort of that extra push and bit of faith to be able to do something this season, at least. We'll get a very early indication of that when we go to City, I think, second week of the season, won't we? So, I mean, so I'm probably not feeling as optimistic as George is at the moment in terms of saying that we could get into that maybe top 5. I know that spot's open with the teams outside the top 4. I really struggle to see us getting that high as it stands.
That was more I think that's where a lot of people in the chat probably misunderstood as well. I wasn't saying with this squad we're getting 5th. I'm saying that the 5th spot is wide open for anyone that wants to take it. Yeah. It's up to us to bridge that gap in the rest of this window. Obviously, at the moment, as it stands, we're not doing that. That's why I think the aim is more top 8. But I'm saying absolutely 5th is on the cards for any one of those teams. United, Villa, Newcastle, us, Bournemouth, Brighton. It's absolutely open, because all of those teams are so much lower than the top 4, in my opinion. Yeah, in terms of where they're at.
But I think it becomes key
to bridge that gap.
I'm about to say, George, it comes to that caveat, like you've said there, to get the top 5, they're going to have to spend the right kind of money on the right kind of profiles to get us there. Kish, we talked about this earlier. The teams had 91 direct goal involvements ripped out of it. So on the basis of where are the goals coming from, how do you even try and comprehend, even trying to answer the question at the moment, Kish, of what the target would be for Frank in terms of the league position? Can you quantify that for you at the moment?
So I think there's a couple of things to note here. I'd say, I think at Brentford, we look at, let's say, Mbeumo, Wissa, Tony. When those guys were brought into Brentford, they weren't the guys we're talking about now. So I think Frank has a track record of really improving attacking players. And Mbeumo came in from the second division of France, as did Wissa. Ivan Tony came from Peterborough. So they're not these superstars that they are or have become. I think the issue we have at the moment is Frank is clearly focusing a lot on defensive structure in the early phase of his coaching, which obviously makes sense with the amount of goals we conceded last season. So I think in his first, let's say, 6 months, I worry that we're gonna be very solid, hard to beat, but I think we are going to lack in terms of chance creation. And I think, to be honest, I think that's not the wrong way to go about it. I think he's setting the foundations. Of course, personnel matters, but I also think Frank can maximize attackers, and he has a track record of doing so. But I think it will take time. In terms of the Champions League and what you guys were saying, I worry about us a lot more going against the teams that are going to sit in a low block rather than the teams that are going to come out and play. I think we'll get some big results this season in terms of over big sides that do leave spaces in behind. Because I think Frank has shown while at Brentford that when teams come onto him and allow them to exploit them on the counter attack, I think he's got a great track record of that. Where I worry is when we're playing the likes of, let's say, Burnley at home, are we going to have enough in terms of our attacking structures, our patterns of play, our quality in general in attack to break them down? And I think that will be the kind of early teething issues under Frank. But I'm someone who sees major holes in the squad, but I also see a lot of quality where we haven't seen it yet. I think certain players have levels to go up. I think there's big potential in the squad. But if you leave those certain holes open, then we won't be able to see those progressions in certain players because, one, like last season, they'll be overplayed. They'll be facing injuries. And so I think the squad has been massively underperforming, but I don't think it's in terms of every individual that they're that level. I think a few of them have a level to go up. But overall, I do think we'll see a major improvement just because of the structures that Frank has a track record of playing and the way that he can maximize a squad that is a lesser quality than most teams around him. I mean, when Brentford came up those first 2 seasons, they had no right to compete with a lot of teams that they did compete with.
Yeah.
But you know, the situation is always different when you come to one of these major clubs because teams respect you a lot more. So they are going to sit off you, and that's a whole different ball game in terms of being structured and solid at the back, and then hitting teams on the counter is a whole different way of coaching to then how can we break down this team that's sitting off us for 90 minutes. I think that's where my main concerns are at the moment with Frank. But in terms of squad, there's major holes, but there's also a lot of quality there that I have faith will go up a level as well.
Yes or no, guys? And you might have said it's a really silly question, me asking you this. Well, I listen, I think it's a silly question. I'm about to ask it. So this is how nuts I am. George, will the squad that we end up with at the end of the transfer window be a squad that we are happy with as fans? Yes or no?
No, I don't think we're ever happy. No matter how many previous managers or windows we've had, I don't think we're ever happy at the end of the window. No, I'm going to say no. I think because of the restrictions in place in the UEFA competitions, I think just the sheer amount of transfers we can do is why people won't be happy. Because I think a lot of fans are going to think we need a left back, we need a left centre back, we need 2 10s, we need a left winger, we need a striker. That is just simply not going to happen no matter what. Yeah. So I think no matter what happens, everyone's going to be disappointed, even if we do bring in maybe one top. You know
what you just said, George? You said with the restrictions that we have in place. I'm going to say this. I think the restrictions for me are this bloody ball. This is the problem. For me, they are the restriction. They are the restriction. They are restricting us from being able to be competitive. That's just my opinion, of course, my own opinion. Mitch, we'll go yes or no on this. We're going to move on. We're coming to EZE time, everybody. We're coming to EZE time. Mitch, yes or no? Will we be happy when this window shuts with what we're going to be left with?
No, I'd be shocked if we filled the gaps that I think most of us are in agreement with that we need to fill by the end of the transfer window. And like George said, it's almost impossible that we're ever happy with the squad, especially when you inevitably compare them to rivals around us. So, yeah, I don't think so.
Kish, is this a redundant question?
Yeah, I know I'm not going to be happy, but I think part the thing I'm most annoyed about is the lack of sales, to be honest, because that's what opens up spaces for incomings, and we haven't been able to do that, and that restricts you in general. So I think that should have been one of the first priorities of the window, and we haven't been able to do that. So yeah.
Okay, look, we're going to squeeze in our next break of the show for our listeners on audio. You are going to be needing this. G might be having this already on his phone with what's coming up. We're delighted to be sponsored by NordVPN. You're going to need NordVPN because we are going to be on a European tour. We do need to be excited. I've messaged Jason tonight. I've told Jason, please be excited. You're going to be going out to Italy to go and watch Spurs in a Super Cup final. Please go and enjoy it and be excited. You know, we don't always have two finals in the space of, a few months. It would be lovely to see Spurs go and win a final. If you need Nordwatch, they're out there. Of course, it allows you to watch some of the favourite shows you can't do when you're back home. You can go to nordvpn.com/LWS. If you need it for data, you can use our code with 𝐤𝐨𝐵, which is LWS at checkout to get 50% off our first purchase. Look, there is well over nearly 10,500 of you watching the show live. Thank you ever so much for your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. I'm joined by George Akliouche. Please make sure you go and subscribe to George's channel, who's trying to give us all optimism and hope and great stuff over there. You've got Mitch, who gives you a lot of daily rundowns of content, latest Spurs news. Please make sure you subscribe to him. And Kish on for the first time. What a debut it's been. It's been a Danny Rose type debut. It's been a storm up. Make sure you go and hit him up, like and subscribe over there. We're going to hopefully work with Kish more as we approach the close of the window if Spurs make any signings. Right, let's bring it on to a player that Spurs are hopefully going to dip their toes back in the market for, and that is 𝐅𝐸𝐸. Before I go to EZE, just going to bring you some news that we're hearing from Fabrizio Romano, who has confirmed in these last few minutes. Sorry, guys, this isn't good news. It's Tottenham in a window at the moment. Tony De Winter rejected a move to Tottenham. He is joining AC Milan instead. That is coming to us from Fabrizio Romano. Tony De Winter rejected a move to Tottenham. He's joining AC Milan. Strike that one off your bingo cards. Right. One that you could put back on your bingo card. And Mitch's face looks like, what, another one? Another one? Yep.
I'm just looking for the tweet to see whether he name drop us in his post.
Allegedly, apparently did name drop us from what I've been told. I will try and throw it back to you, Mitch. But I can find it in a back room somewhere. But apparently rejected Spurs in the meantime. Who hasn't rejected us so far? Well, I say not many. We're not been as bad as Newcastle so far this summer, but it feels like there's been a few rejections potentially. Look, let's come on to one man that it looked like Spurs weren't going to go back in for, and they may now do. 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸. Let's bring you up to speed what is happening with 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸 and Tottenham in general with him. Now, we knew at the start of the summer, 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸 was on Tottenham's radar. He was understood to be a very much firm Tottenham target. We then heard reports that Arsenal had started sniffing around the player. And from what we could gauge, Arsenal were going to make a move for 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸, which led Spurs to back off, cool their interest. I think many would understand. It is very difficult for Spurs to be politically in a race between a player of 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸's caliber, between Tottenham and Arsenal. And for Tottenham not to sign the player, it just wouldn't look great on the optics in terms of that situation. So it appears Arsenal at the moment, from what we understand, and look, I'm going to say this, it's the transfer window. Things can change. Arsenal, we understand, are cooling their interest in the player. It appears they are now focused on making sure they've got players going out the door. And that may lead to Tottenham coming back in for 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸. We understand Spurs may, in this next week, potentially go back in for an offer for 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸. And Mitch is very kind in the back and giving me some quotes that has come out from Steve Parish on keeping the likes of EZE and 𝐁𝐸. He said, players come and go in football clubs. It's a life cycle, isn't it? Hopefully they're still here. That's what I'd like, but we'll see. So no direct confirmation from Crystal Palace chairman Steve Parish there that they're going to be able to keep 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸, but there are suggestions Tottenham are going to go back in for a bid. Let's come over if we can to George to start. George, 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸, he looks like a Tottenham player. He plays like a Tottenham player. Oh, what this would do to our fan base if we get 𝐅𝐸𝐸𝐸 over the line. Can it happen, George? Do you see it happening?
Whoa, can it happen is a big is a big question from what we've seen so far this window. Look, as a player, same as a lot of other people have said, he's phenomenal. I think he'd be fantastic for what we need. I think the issue maybe earlier in the window as well was that with Maddison obviously not being injured at the time, and he's not, in my opinion, he's not a left winger really, to be honest, as much as he can play there. So I think maybe there was little skepticism on his side and his team side about the type of minutes, especially going into a World Cup year, that he would get at Spurs versus, even though he would easily walk into our team, in my opinion. But there's still that question when Maddison was about where those minutes going to come from. Whereas you'd rather just stay at Palace. And obviously, if Arsenal coming for him, you'd probably choose them as well. But if they've called in their interest, we've got a spot open in the team where he just walks in and he's going to be there week in, week out. For me personally, it's an absolute no-brainer. I just wonder if there maybe Palace are waiting to find out their situation with Europe. I imagine if they're in the Europa League, maybe that adds an extra 10 mil to his price tag. It's weird because us as fans probably want Palace to get Europe just so that Europa League, sorry, that is just so that Nottingham Forest don't get it. But I imagine the club might want them to stay in the Conference League, so we have a better chance of getting Eze if that's the case. But hey, that's just all speculation. I think it'd be a fantastic signing. I'd love it to happen. Can I see it happening just off the basis of what we've seen so far this window? No, but I'd love to be proven wrong because I think he'd be. He kind of ticks every box. The position we need.
Yeah.
Homegrown as well, because I think even though it's not really a major issue, we do currently only have 7 homegrown players in the Premier League, where obviously we do with 8. I mean, even with Maddison out, that brings it down to 6 technically. So we should be after English players, even if they aren't technically club trained. Yeah. For me, he just ticks every box for what we need. I just don't really think it's going to happen based off of what we've seen so far.
Mitch, let's come over to you. Look, it does feel, and this again may upset people when I say this, that Arsenal does appear to be his first choice. He was with Arsenal, I think, as a teenager. He was let go. I think what is important to note is that the release clause, which stood for EZE at 68 million with add-ons, has already expired, which now means that either Tottenham or any other club going in for the player would have to strike a deal now directly with Palace for him. What's your gut on this, Mitch? I know he's a player that you would absolutely love to see in a Spurs shirt. Has your gauge changed as to whether this could now be realistically back on the table?
Probably, as it stands, it probably hasn't changed. I don't currently sit here and think we will sign Eze. It's just I've been sort of like pining for him all summer. He's been like my number one guy since the transfer window. I love him. It's a very similar sort of case to what I had with James Maddison before we signed him. I just love the way he plays, and I love that type of player. And I was desperate for Madders to come to the club, and thankfully he did. And I kind of feel the same way about 𝐅𝐸ZE. I thought we should have signed him before he ended up going to Palace. I think we should sign him now. Like has already been said, he ticks a lot of boxes, and he gives you that sort of wow factor as well. If we point to the Tottenham ethos of players getting you off your seats, playing entertaining football, like he ticks those boxes as well.
He is him.
He is him. Very wisely said, mate. But yeah, he can also obviously play the 10 and the left wing, so it gives him that versatility as well. Almost in terms of that he can rotate out there. And yeah, I didn't know, because I've seen a lot of contrasting reports on the release clause, actually. Some people are saying it doesn't expire till the 15th. Some people are saying it has already. But I think in a ballpark figure anyway, you're playing somewhere near to what the release clause was, even if it has expired now anyway, right? So
yep.
I just think, I want someone to explain to me why we don't just bite the bullet and go for it. And I know you mentioned the idea of the potential of losing out to Arsenal for him, but like I said, we've had the entire summer to bring players in. He's someone that we all know that Spurs have been tracking for a number of years now, and I feel like, although I don't want to praise him for it, I feel like he's a type of signing that Daniel Levy would actually really like. So to me, that's sort of where I get a bit confused as to why we've maybe not gone for him and sort of pulled the trigger on trying to get a deal done for that, unless there's stuff behind the scenes I'm missing. Maybe he hasn't really given his willingness to join, or maybe really is set on joining Arsenal. But yeah, ultimately, I would love to see him in a Spurs shirt. And if there's a little bit of hope that we can still go back in for him, I would love to see it. But as I've pretty much been for this entire show, my feeling is one of I'm not getting my hopes up too much at the moment.
Mitch, this Kish, just come over to you and bring you in. I know, again, you're a man of stats, and I think everything that you look at with the player, points to him being a proper Tottenham player. He gets you off your seat. We haven't currently got a figurehead at the club. I mean that in all due respect. Kane left. Obviously, we had Sonny, Maddison around. Maddison's now out for the majority of the season. Signing this player, just in my opinion alone, gives such a boost to the fan base. We're all in need, I think, of somebody to come in and sweep us off our feet. That could be 𝐅𝐸𝐸 EZE, but I do understand, again, as I said earlier, in regards to this player, the optics of this. If this player wants to join Arsenal, this makes it very, very hard to do this deal. Of course, if Arsenal aren't in the picture and he's willing to come to Tottenham, then obviously that makes it a lot easier. I mean, what's your gauge for you, Kish, on this? The player, what he would bring to the team, the analytical side of him. Give me your thoughts on him, Kish, for you.
I mean, I love EZE as a player. I've loved him since he was at QPR. I think the way he plays is so smooth, so good to watch. The way he can beat players effortlessly is just one of the best things to watch in football. I think I did read that, and this was, I think, Paul O'Keefe said this, that Frank didn't want him. And so I was kind of considering this off from what I read from Paul O'Keefe, but I was trying to kind of work out why Frank might potentially not want him. I think why the pros to EZE are his dribbling ability. I think his ability to also shoot now. I think he's really added goals to his game. Although he does shoot in very high volume, so he does. I think he does suit Palace in terms of their whole setup is kind of built around him, and I think that was where I was trying to look at some potential concerns and why Frank might not want him. I think he's someone who roams a lot, needs that freedom to kind of pick up certain pockets. I think he's I guess their talisman, and he's able to kind of start on that left and then really get the ball on the touchline, but then able to dribble infield. And I think Frank probably wants something more specific from his players. And this is not me. I would love EZE at the club. I was just trying to kind of work out why potentially Frank would not want him. I think Frank also wants from his 10 someone who can drop deep and pick up the ball off the other two midfielders and then drive. And I think that's why Gibbs-White made so much sense to me, because that was what he's so good at. He's so powerful in the way he carries the ball. And he's able to kind of do those two things. So picking up the ball in a bit of deeper areas and then traveling with it really quickly into the final third where you can create. And I think EZE is someone you probably want more in the final third at all times. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't go and get him, because you can tweak bits of your system to allow EZE to be more free in the final third. And especially when we're so starved of creativity at the moment, that seems a no-brainer for me. I think his his game would need to adapt a little bit from what it is at Palace. That's my overarching thought on it. Just because he's like the hero of Palace, and he plays a bit into that in his game, where he goes on mazy dribbles and shoots from all different areas. And that would be my main thing that he would have to kind of adapt. But in terms of talent, personality as well, like he's someone you just want playing for your club. I think he comes across as such a good guy. Would be great for the kind of feeling around the club. But I think there would also be some adaptations that would have to be made for him coming in. But he's the kind of player I would love to watch at Spurs every week. And I think that's one thing we've missed as well at Spurs is like, just because obviously the feeling's been so negative, but I think even just looking at individuals, we haven't had a player in a while. And even in our rough teams in the past, you've had players that get you off your seat. And I think we've really lacked that.
100%.
And going to the games every week, you just want some kind of bright spark, because that's what you pay your money for, to enjoy it. And I think EZE is the pinnacle of that. And so that for me, I'd never say no to these type of signings because they're the kind of players I love watching.
The maddest thing is as well is that I think now that there's no Sonny and no Madison, we kind of need that talismanic player that is able to
100%
roam where they want. I mean, even Damsgaard to an extent with I 100% agree with you about collecting deeper, but Damsgaard was everywhere on the pitch, and I think Eze can replicate that to a degree. Probably, like you said, maybe more so in the attacking third, but at least this one he can pick up on the left, right, centre. He can drive forward. He can create those. He can unlock defenses with passes. He can he's great on free kicks. We're losing that with Madison as well, which is another big thing. Obviously, I know we've got Porro in the ranks, but there's just so much to his game that I think would add to Spurs, no matter who's the manager, but especially under Frank as well. So
for me, one thing I wanted to add is which I made a video on early in the summer when we were linked with him. It's just Eze is the kind of player for me that you just go and get and worry about the fit later. Because I just think
Kish, if we're it's not like you. If we are bloody worried about the fit of Eberechi Eze, we should not be here.
Exactly.
We've currently got no number 10. We've got no player that gets you off your feet. If we have got any, he's not going to dig at Kish. But if anybody's worried about the fit of Eberechi Eze, we should not be here. We should really not be here.
And I think those players, you just make it work. I just think they're that good.
So special.
And and they bring such good feeling as well. I think that goes underestimated sometimes how important those kind of figures are to be at your club, because it's not just all about kind of fit and tactical elements and stuff like that. There's so much about creating a good environment and atmosphere within the stadium, just around the club, that also actually affects success as well. Because when the feeling around the club is good, that does such wonders for the team, the atmosphere, and all those kind of things. And I think sometimes those things go underestimated within recruitment and within fan bases in general.
Could you imagine? It's a bit trivial, but could you imagine the black away kit in Champions League with Eze 7 on the back? That's going to do record numbers.
It just looks 7. Well. It honestly,
sense, man. It just works.
Honestly, I'm not being funny. I hope it's don't take this in a disrespectful way, but obviously, the loss of Son is such a massive revenue difference for the club. Someone like Eze this is not why I maybe give an argument why the ball should buy him on this alone. He would sell you so many shirts, man. He's a shirt seller, Eze. He's a player that honestly, he would be that kind of figurehead at Tottenham that we miss. And it goes back to what you said earlier about Kish, about players growing up. For me was Ginola. Ginola, for me growing up, Ginola was my player growing up. Everyone had their player growing up. If it was more the modern, it would be the Bales, it'd be the Lennons of this world, the Defoes, it was those kind of players that would get you off your feet, the Van der Vaarts, you go back to Klinsmann. There was that one player. I just feel at the moment, this is no disrespect to the squad we've got right now. I don't know if we've got that kind of player at the moment. I don't know if there's that kind of player that really does get you off your feet right now as a Spurs fan. You boys are all kind of shaking your head as to say, no, there's not.
Kudus is the closest thing, right? He's only been at the club for like a month. And he looks like, in that Bayern game the other day, he was the only one I sat there and watched and thought, do you know what? He's got something really good about him. But that's it. That's genuinely it at the moment.
Yep. There's honestly at the moment nobody for me that really does get us off the edge of their seats. This is the hard question.
Madison at his best, I think, but obviously he's injured now.
And I think again with Madison, when he does come back, there's going to be difficult conversation that needs to be had maybe later down the line with Madders, because the injuries that we get with Madders are reoccurring injuries that are not 1 week, 2 week. They're quite sustainable lengths of time.
It's the same knee as well. That is the thing that's worrying me. The long-term same knee over and over again.
An ACL, I mean, do players ever recover back to their absolute peak, prime, optimum after you do that injury?
Van Dijk's the only one that I think has actually recovered really well. But then again, you're talking about a centre-back, a world-class centre-back versus...
Verts did it as well. But it's
true,
rare.
actually, yeah. It is very rare.
Yeah. Right. Guys, there are some alternatives out there that have been mentioned on the on the grapevine. I'm going to throw them in and you kind of give me your gauge on them. One of them that is an alternative, and I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this with regards to these number 10s, is that of McAtee of Man City, where there are reports Spurs are pushing to land James McAtee, and he is emerging as an alternative target out there, given the fact City are willing to sell the player, and the player is keen on staying in the Premier League, would love to play Champions League football elsewhere. He has shown himself to be quite a decent prospect so far. I mean, again, is a young player. I know when I spoke to Jason about this over the weekend, Jason said to me that when you look at City's profile of the kind of players that have come out their academy and how they've hit the ground running at other clubs, I mean, the likes, again, of a Liam Delap, the Cole Palmer, this is why I think some fans would maybe like the signing of McAtee. If I stick with you, Jill, just coming around to your McAtee for you, that kind of profile, is he one that really grabs you to say, sign me?
For me, it's if we still had Maddison available completely, I think I'd be a lot more open to the idea, because I think he's quite a bit different as well. I think he's a lot more of a goal scorer than a creator, I would say. And I think as well, I think when we're in this situation now where, we've lost Maddison, Kulusevski's not going to be back for a while. And I personally see Kulusevski playing right wing more under Frank than I would see him playing attacking mid. Obviously, out of necessity, he might have to play in the middle more now, but I originally saw him more on the right. We now need that attacking midfield, that number 10, so to speak, to be a bit more, a little bit more ready, a little bit more experienced. So for me, I think this would just be a decent signing if we already had Maddison. Now that he's out, I'm just not so sure it's at this very moment worth the risk going for a younger player that hasn't played an insane amount of Premier League minutes.
Okay, fine. George, well, you can come back round in a second because I'm going to loop some of these in as we go to all differently to the names that we've had. Mitch, coming around to you, we understand, despite Spurs' denial, there is an interest in signing Nico Paz, but from what we understand, Spurs would have to pay up to around 60 million to sign the Argentinian wonder kid. 20-year-old attacking midfielder, scored 6 goals and provided 9 assists in 35 league games last season. He helped the newly promoted club Como achieve a 10th place finish. The obstacle in the form of Real Madrid does face Spurs for this one because they have a buyback clause in Paz's contract. Xabi Alonso's side chose not to activate their 6.9 million clause this summer, but that price will only increase to 7.8 million next summer and then rise to 8.6 million in the summer of 2027. Moreover, the Spanish giants reportedly hold a 50% sell-on clause as well, pushing Como to increase Paz's valuation. I mean, everything about this move to me, Mitch, whilst he might be a very talented player, there's a hesitation from me because they've got this buyback clause on him for the next few years, Mitch. Gage for you on Paz. Where are you on that for you, Mitch?
Very, very, very talented player who I believe would be, I think he would be a really good signing. But as you've just mentioned, the logistics of a deal for Nico Paz it's basically impossible. I don't think it's such a weird one. Real Madrid, with these buyback clauses, they've basically loaned him to Como. With how low the buyback clauses fees are, they're basically, I feel like it's almost guaranteed that they activate that at some point and he goes back to Madrid, to be honest with you. But he was really impressive in Serie A last season. Is doing really, really well for Como, and he'd be quite high up on my list of names and targets that we've been linked to. He would be right up there. For me personally anyway, but like you said, it's really difficult for me to get my head around signing him just because of the logistics of that sort of deal, seemingly impossible. I don't even know if 60 million would do it, to be honest, because of how much Real Madrid would be owed and stuff like that. But yeah, him and EZE probably my top 2, and then the fella from Monaco whose name I simply cannot pronounce, no matter how many times I've tried over the last week or so. He looks really, really bright as well.
Listen, Mitch, don't worry. Trust me to absolutely batter his name because I'm the king of this. Monaco youngster Magnez Akliouche. I've probably completely got it wrong. If I have, I'm so sorry. He is currently being scouted by Tottenham, but it is unclear if at the moment he is an active target. The versatile 23-year-old scored 7 goals and provided 12 assists across all comps last season. He operated primarily on the right wing. He occasionally can play as a number 10. There was the French journalist Sebastien Vidal that reported last week Spurs are monitoring the player and view the 23-year-old as a versatile option who offers the creativity. He is one of Liga's brightest talents. He's earned rave reviews, starred on that right wing, as I've mentioned. Definitely one to keep an eye on. One I do want to ask you about, Kish, as well, and feel free to bring some other names into play. I know George is probably itching to come back on Paz. I will come on to George to go Paz shortly. I can see George is smiling at me in the back end. I have to ask you about, if I can, Kish, Khannouss, because I think you've done a bit of profile on Khannouss from your end on the White Lab. There are suggestions that Tottenham actually did hold talks with Harvey Elliott's representatives, but did not take those conversations any further. And part of the reason for that is because there is a genuine interest in Khannouss. Whether it goes any further than a genuine interest is unsure, but it's understood Spurs have been monitoring this player ever so carefully. Key thing to know about him, he's got a 22.5 million relegation release clause, although some interested clubs are speaking to Leicester about a slightly higher package deal in order to gain more preferable payment terms. Leicester are prepared to sell the player if somebody comes in the region, we understand, of 25 million. Kish, take it away for us. What do you think in terms of that profile of player? Would he be the right fit if we go down the list of the EZEs, the Paz, Akliouche? What do you think for you? Oh, have I frozen? Oh, we've just lost Kish on the $1 million question. We will get Kish back. Let me throw around to you, G. Feel free, you want to come in on that point. Because I know again you're a big fan of Paz and Khannouss. What do you make of those couple of links?
I mean, I definitely don't know Khannouss as extensively as Kish does. So obviously, I think he can probably add more context to it. I think he definitely looks like a very tidy player, and I think he's great on set pieces as well. I think it's just with the little knowledge I have in comparison to some of the others, I personally would rather go for someone that has a little bit more experience, which is hard to say because of how much I love Nico Paz, and you can argue that Serie A is that as much different as Premier League, but naturally, obviously, with them having one season and then getting relegated, it's a tough comparison. But for me personally, with like someone like Nico Paz, for example, I genuinely, hand on heart believe this kid's going to be a future superstar, which is why I think a deal is almost impossible.
Why, G? Why will he be a future superstar? Tell us why. Why will he be?
Well, to be fair, I think when you look at some of the data as well, he's actually a perfect alternative to Morgan Gibbs-White. It's kind of all across the midfield. It's sort of what we were talking about earlier about maybe some midfielders not necessarily collecting from deeper positions or whatever. I think Paz does that, and I think for me, what he's absolutely brilliant at is shielding the ball and then turning the players and driving away from them, driving forward. Really nice left-footed player, and I think he's got the I think the ability at such a young age, and even I think he's already 6'1", I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He's breaking into the Argentine national team as we speak as well, especially with the World Cup year coming up. I just think the reason why it's so difficult is, again, with the World Cup year, he's obviously going to want guaranteed minutes. He wants to break into the Argentine side. Real Madrid have a 50% sell-on clause at the moment, which is why when the reports came out that they wanted 60 million plus, because naturally Como want to make some money on that, right? And with Real Madrid's buyback clauses, this summer it was 8 million euros. I believe they had a date that they didn't accept it by, because obviously they don't want to have it throughout the whole summer window, because what if they trigger it on transfer deadline day, then Como are without a star player, and they won't be able to make another signing. So I think that's already passed. Next year it goes up to 9 million euros, so it's still nothing. So the only out that I can see with it is, would Como accept an offer later in the window, knowing that they're getting 50%, but that's still going to be more than the 9 million euros? Who knows? But then again, it's still up to the player. I think the player has his sights set on Real Madrid, if I'm being honest with you. Have another year of development at Como, potentially go back to Real Madrid next year, or in the worst case scenario, Real Madrid buy him back next year, and then Real Madrid are the ones that make the profit on the sale of the player. Right. So I love the player. I just really think it's such a difficult deal to do.
Let's just bring you in, and maybe one that might be a more realistic one to do. We kind of built it out there. We gave it all the dramatic, the $1 million headline, and then we lost him.
I don't know what happened.
Isn't that so typical Tottenham? We go for the crescendo, bang, it's gone. Tell us very quickly, Khannouss, Kish, why would he potentially be a decent signing for Tottenham? Obviously, a player that would be a lot less expensive than, you'd argue, the McAtee's, Paz, EZE type prolific profile. Kish.
Yeah, this is where I'm big on our recruitment, and why money isn't necessarily always a reflection of the quality of the player. I think people look at this, and if you want to be lazy about the narrative, that you can say it's the cheap option, but this is a quality player. He's been tipped to be something special since he was 16, 17, coming through at Genk. He's like the star of a very talented Moroccan generation coming through. And today he played in Leicester's first game of the Championship. I think they won 2-1. He assisted both of them. He's just one of the most technically gifted footballers I've watched, not just in England. I just think he's technically incredible. I think where the issues come with him is physically. I think at times he can be out-muscled, but I think he's so good technically that often he can manipulate the ball in a way where he doesn't even feel the contact. You know, the best kind of number 10s we've seen, David Silva, Juan Mata, people like that who are very slight in stature, but are so quick and so good technically that they don't even need to be. I think that does carry with him. And I think also he's very good at dropping into those deeper areas and creating from deeper areas, and then also the ability to perform in the final third. I think he has a step to go up in terms of output, but I think context is very key here, because it's so difficult to get output in a team that is constantly playing a low block and getting dominated every week, like Leicester were. I think he was in and out of that early team at Leicester because they wanted a solid sort of base in what they were trying to do. And I think he's a player that would really thrive in a more forward-thinking, progressive team. And so I think I wouldn't look at the numbers. I'd look at him as a player, and how can that scale up to a team that dominates the ball more, him getting more and more touches. So I think you have to, with these kind of signings, you have to take context as key. I think we've seen Liverpool in the past sign players from relegated sides that maybe were questioned at the time, and then they scaled up really well. I think Andy Robertson, Wijnaldum, they were both kind of quality signings that maybe weren't looked at so good at the time, but obviously scaled up really well. So I think sometimes signings are simple and you say he's great, he's been great in the Premier League, and sometimes there's value to be had in places that people might not see. I think Khannouss is a perfect example of that, and one that will be, for me, very easy to do, but also not because it's the cheap option, because he's a great player as well.
Okay.
But Nico Paz as well. I mean, Nico Paz would be a level above him. I think he's a future superstar. So that would
do you agree with George, Kish, how difficult that deal would be to do? Is it going to be complicated, that, given the nature of the buyback clauses, how difficult that makes that?
There's always a connection between sort of these South American players and wanting to join Barcelona and Real Madrid. I think that's always the case. Especially being a Spanish speaker, I feel like he's probably picturing himself at Real Madrid in his peak. But that's not to say that he's only 20 years old. I mean, if Spurs can own him outright, that's never going to be a bad thing if we could get that done. And then Real Madrid maybe come in 5 years and we double what we paid for him or whatever. I don't think that's a negative, especially where we're at right now. He'd take us up a level for sure. And he's someone who brings numbers as well as all-round quality. So yeah, I can't see it happening because I think his eyes are probably set on Madrid. He'd be fantastic.
Kish, thank you so much. They're refusing to let you finish a transfer on the back end, Mitch. Sorry, Kish, whoever's controlling your Wi-Fi there, they're refusing to let you finish, but we've got it from you. That's fantastic. Guys, I need to ask you one final question. We've had some news that Mitch has very kindly fed me through. We've heard Thomas Frank speak about Spurs' recruitment. No, we're not going to be here for another 2 hours based on what we've heard. We're going to try and get through those quotes very quickly. But just one question to you all. You all seem to be very unconvinced Eze is going to join Tottenham. If it isn't going to be Eberechi Eze, which number 10 can you realistically see joining Spurs at this point? Is it one of the names we've already spoken about? Is it a different name? Is there a gut feeling? Give me one name. George, let me start with you. Sorry, I'm about to come to you straight away on this without having much time to think. From what we spoke about, from what we've seen, is any one name you think, right, that is a player you can see Spurs moving for?
In terms of like realistic signing, I think probably Harvey Elliott, to be honest.
Okay.
I think, again, ticking a couple of boxes of being, English. I think he's a bit more of an attacking midfielder, right winger almost, as how he's been. Well, I guess a right centre mid is sort of what he's been on a lot for Liverpool. I just think they clearly want to make a sale to also help facilitate a potential move for Isak, which means they're going to be a lot more open for him to leave. Whereas some of the other players, I'm just not so sure the deals can get done at this time.
Okay. Mitch, for you, one name. Give me one number 10. Anyone we spoke about here or someone else? Give us one, Mitch. Unmute for us and tell us.
I'm going to say McAtee for similar reasons to what George said. Obviously, England under-21's captain. Probably a relatively straightforward deal to do if Spurs are willing to fork out what City want, and there's that potential, isn't there, that he could become the next Cole Palmer or could rise like Liam Delap has. So I feel like that's the type of opportunistic deal that Levy and Spurs would love. So that's who I could see as a realistic sort of signing that we'll make.
Mitch, thanks. I feel like Kish has already sold us on him. Is it? You think it's going to be Kish? Is it going to be Khannouss for you that you're going to tell us? Do you think is the most realistic one?
No, for me, I think if we wanted to do this one, we would have got it done. So that's why I'm
interesting.
I think Akliouche might. I have a feeling they might move for him. I know that's been muted for a couple weeks now.
Okay.
And for me that would be a good signing. So that I feel like they'll go bigger than McAtee, just because of the feeling around the club. Although obviously we can't bank on it, but that's what I feel.
Okay, look, we're going to bring you in some quotes very quickly now. And I told the guys, what was funny is in the back end, I said, guys, we'll be out of here by an hour and a half. And Mitch said, all right, we'll be out of here by 11.
It's my fault for feeding you all of these quotes, Ricky. So I'll take the blame for it.
You can just blame Mitch because Mitch says we'll be out of it. I said we'll be out of it by 10. And Mitch said no chance. So Mitch knows what it's like. He's been on this show for far too long. Kish is thinking, what am I signing myself up for? Do I really want to do this? I must be crazy. Thomas Frank has spoken about Tottenham's transfer window and on Johan Langer. Got to get these guys' thoughts on these quotes. He said, this is Thomas Frank on Johan Langer and Spurs' window so far. Obviously, we are signing players here where the process in Brentford, I'm not saying they were better. I think they're very good. I think that Johan and his team is doing a top job, but just for them to understand what I'm looking for, so that needs to be aligned. At Brentford, it was aligned. I want that, okay? Fine. We look at it, boom. And now I need to use more time with Johan and Rob. He's referring to Rob McKenzie, who works in the backroom staff there. And these guys, and then we need to make presentations. No. I need that instead. So that is just all the extra hours every day. So that is an exclusive quote there. That is coming from Johan Lang with regards to Tottenham's transfer window. Boys, what do you make of that as we seek the close on the show? George, what are you taking away from those quotes from Thomas Frank?
I think that one line about the fact it's more about that they're potentially showing Frank players that aren't the right type of player is what worries me. I can understand the first half because I think he said that in one of his first interviews as well. He was at Brentford for 7 years, right? He's there for a long time. He's managed to build a relationship where you'd like to think they're a little bit more synonymous in how, in terms of what the recruitment need to get for him. That sort of last part of that paragraph about the no, I need that instead. So it's all extra hours of every day. The thing that worries me about that then is clearly they've had a conversation, they've had meetings where Frank has clearly outlined, I need this player, or this type of player, I need them to be able to do this or whatever. And clearly whatever options are coming back to him are not the right thing if he's stating, no, I need this instead. That's the bit that worries me because at the end of the day, Johan Langer and his team are the ones that are being employed to find the right players that he needs, right? So that's the bit that really does concern me is the team actually providing the right options for what Frank needs?
What I'm also getting more worried about is the fact that I've been tagging this 15 times saying discuss. So, but the fact someone's tagged us in that 15 times feels like it's really serious. I mean, Mitch, we're not having a Conte moment already, have we? We've got a final in 3 days. I mean, how do you take those quotes? Are they really concerning quotes for you? It does feel that Frank is seemingly kind of suggesting out there that maybe, as George said, the player of profile he's being offered maybe isn't to what he likes. Is that a fair judgment, Mitch, based on those comments?
Yeah, I think so. I think it alludes back to, I can't remember who said it. It might have been Kish, but it alludes back to the fact that when you're at a club like Tottenham themselves are going to have their own idea of the players that they think Tottenham need, and then they're going to present those to the manager. And I feel like that's probably what's been happening a lot of the time this summer. And Thomas Frank, he's very thorough with everything, isn't he? He's very much engorged in every single detail of everything when it comes to being in charge of a football club. So he will no doubt have a very specific idea of the type of player that he wants to bring into the club, which is absolutely fine. The only issue is that means it's going to take a lot more time for him to be aligned with our sporting directors and those that are leading the transfer hunts. And as a result, it's probably one of the main reasons why we've seen such a delay in bringing players in this summer and are still struggling in that aspect. So it's concerning from that point. In the long term, if it means they are able to get aligned and they are on the same wavelength in terms of they're able to bring in players that Frank wants without having to sit there and extensively plan it for weeks on end, then that's absolutely fine. But, like we're all very aware, there's only, 3 weeks left of the transfer window. We've had the entire summer now with Frank sort of in the door, and you would have hoped that transfers and priority positions and players were one of the top priorities when it came to initial conversations, even probably before he got the job. Yeah, that's probably something they would have talked about. So the fact that these quotes have now come out and there seems to still be maybe that block between them in terms of getting deals done, it's a little bit concerning there. Yes, I'm just hoping that they're able to find a solution before this window shuts.
Agree, Mitch. Kish, let me bring you to conclude us here. How concerned are you by those quotes? Because he makes it very, very clear that at Brentford there was a clear alignment. And at Tottenham, he's saying, I want that, okay? I want that. How do you interpret those quotes from your end, Kish, and the nature that we are receiving those quotes 3 days before we go into a Super Cup final?
Yeah, I think partly it's to be expected that you get the trust of the overall club when you're there for longer. And so at Brentford, he obviously has built such a good relationship with the whole club that he's trusted with a lot more. I think Frank's the type of manager you probably do give some control over transfers because he's not a system specific coach. So he's not going to bring in players that potentially in 2 years, if he isn't at the club, are going to be specific to his system. Whereas with Conte, I understood the reservations with signing, let's say, wing back specific players that in 2 years' time when Conte walks it aren't going to be useful. I think Frank is someone that you can really involve with the transfer proceedings, and he's also so specific on all the details. And I think Brentford probably understood that about him and knew that was a thing that was vital to him about the specificity of exactly what he needs. And I think they're probably maybe not used to that, and he's probably being very pedantic about what exactly he wants is. I think those relationships build over time, and I don't think they should have been. Those kind of conversations should have been done way before the transfer windows started. But
that's my worry that we're hearing these words now.
That's
my worry is that we're
really
hearing these words now,
less
than 3 weeks to the window going. That's my worry.
It always seems reactive at Spurs, and it never seems proactive. And I think that's the main concern. Not the quotes themselves, just the timing of the quotes.
Yeah. It's a worry for me, Kish, that's publicly coming out now. 3 weeks before the window comes to an end, days before a Super Cup final, where clearly we're looking for players and searching for players. My question is, why do we need to know this? What I would love to know is, again, is he not trying to stir stuff up or trying to incite anything? Why has that been leaked to us as fans? What's Frank trying to tell us? That's what I would try.
It's not in his nature, I don't think, to speak out against the club. He's not someone who's likely to throw their toys out the pram for no reason. Not that he's doing that here. I think he's probably sounds frustrated. So yeah, I think it's probably that he's frustrated with where the squad's at, and I think the Maddison injury changes everything because there's literally a role within the squad that doesn't have a single player that can fit it properly, and that I think going into a big game is a massive thing. When the transfer window's open, you can solve that issue. Whereas I think pre-Maddison injury, at least he would have a starting 11 that he looked at and thought, okay, right, the squad may be not fully big enough, but at least I've got a starting 11 that I'm happy with each role and each position. I think now there's major holes in a game that's going to be massive.
We've not even got through one transfer window yet, and it feels like the manager's distanced himself from what the sporting director's offering him in terms of players. I tell you, only Tottenham. Look, we are, for all of our sakes, going to leave you there. I will say again, a massive thank you to over the 13,500 that have watched Last Word on Spurs. Guys, we've not even hit game weeks yet. We're hitting 13,500 at this time. Thank you ever so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. One man you're going to see a lot always across the season. He's been me for the last 8 of them. George Echilier. George, thank you so much. He's ready to go back home and away. Are you actually? I say he's ready. Are you ready, George?
Oh, I'm packing tomorrow, and we're heading off to the Super Cup on Tuesday. So, yeah, I guess I'm going to have to be. Yeah, no, great. Thanks for having me back on, as always.
Pleasure as always, mate.
8 years is mental, and there's going to be probably 8 more, and the hair's going to go further and further back, and probably disappear entirely with the way this club are behaving. So, yeah.
I've got to say, if people see the comments that this show is ending on, I'll tell you, what was the start like?
Oh, it's never dull at Spurs, is it? We can't have anything nice. Even though that 48-hour period looks so good with Khannouss and Gibbs-White, it's just never going to happen that way, that easy, is it? So, listen, yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm just praying Spurs can get some big deal done at some point soon, because I think we're really going to need it. Because, like Kish was alluding to earlier, I think Burnley are going to come and sit back against us on Saturday after the players had already played on Wednesday, and I'm pretty certain he's going to play pretty close to the same team in both games. So to not have that creative player to unlock that defense is going to be very difficult. So fingers crossed we get some better news tomorrow. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
And as always, where can people find you? Tell us where they can find you across the socials. Tell us where they can find you.
Just my name, anywhere and everywhere. George Echilier on YouTube. Trying to go down the sort of analytical route this time around, learning as I'm going along. So if you fancy that, going to be breaking down pretty much most games this season, if I get the time. And then, yeah, TikTok and Instagram, carrying on the cinematics at games and whatnot, and just keep tracking on, really.
I love that Jason's messaging me going, Ricky's already dramatic, and we've not even hit match week 1. I said, we're just getting started. I haven't even started yet. You wait till I get onto Sky. I'll unravel. I'm only joking. Let's go to Mitch. Mitch, always a pleasure. Thank you so much, mate. God, I think you're in second, third season already with me. You must be sick of me already. You even know my time issues. And you said, I've got to say, it's your fault, Mitch, because you keep feeding us great comments on the side. You've got to keep throwing this in. Mitch, where can we find the wonderful work you do?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me on.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to another season. Despite how we're all feeling at the moment, I'm looking forward to another season of shows and everything that I'm sure we'll discuss over the next sort of 8 months. But yeah, it's been great. Amazing to obviously chat with George and Kish as well. It's been good fun. But yeah, you can find me over on YouTube and TikTok and pretty much everywhere else. Same as what George said, really. If you just search my name, I'll probably pop up. I've got plenty of content going out at the moment and have plans across the season to do so as well. So if you fancy it, come check me out. I'd greatly appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for having me on again, Ricky. It's been great fun.
Mitch, pleasure's all been ours. Thank you for also giving me some help in the back end. We wouldn't be bringing these quotes if it weren't for Mitch. So if you don't like me for bringing the quote up, don't blame me. Also, don't blame Mitch. He's not the one controlling what's being said, just to be clear. Wonderful Kish has made his debut from Lily White Lab. They're also getting started on the YouTube scene. Kish, where can we find what you're doing over there? Some great stuff going on behind there. And hopefully, there's no offense to you, I hope you can be really busy in the next three weeks, Kish, because we need some bloody signings.
Yeah, mainly, I think the main goal for me at the moment is growing the YouTube. So that's Lily White Lab on YouTube. I'm also on TikTok and X as well, mainly looking at analysis and tactics over there, player analysis as well. So any new signings, I'll look to break them down. But thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And you two, Mitch and George, speaking to you has been great. So thank you, guys.
Kish, you're a star. 𝐁𝐲 says, last one on Spurs raid. EZE is on the horizon. Get Elliot in. Change for Spurs. Bless those guys over there doing the hard work and the hard guys. Good evening, Ricky. Great panel on the show. Big announcement coming on Monday. There you go. Change for Spurs. Big announcement coming on Monday. Keep eyes out on all social media. Listen, thank you so much out there for all the wonderful support for Last Word on Spurs. We are waiting for Spurs to get going. Spurs, do something. Do anything. From George, from Mitch, from Kish, from me. We've been the Last Word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.